I'm Leanne Tran, psychologist who's worked with families whose kids don't fit the mould for almost 20 years. I've worked with children for decades, but I know parents are the real change makers when it comes to their kids. Having 3 kids of my own means I know it's not easy. Parent Like a Psychologist is all about simplifying how you support your kids with psychology information filtered through years of experience to take you from overwhelmed to confident. Come on in. Welcome everyone to another episode of Parent Like a Psychologist, and a special welcome to my guest today, Lisa Chan. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for having me.
So, Lisa, I'm excited to talk with you today because you and I have some areas of crossover. We both have a course called Chaos to Calm for parents, and I guess that's representative of us both seeing over the years that feeling parents have of things being chaotic and out of control, and then our idea is to or what parents are looking for is a more calm experience in family life.
Yes.
Um, yeah, we have some differences. So I'm a psychologist, you're an occupational therapist, or bring that approach, but you help families with, well, I should introduce you first. So you've got over a decade of experience as an occupational therapist working with children, and you specialize in helping families to transform those interactions that have a lot of conflict and um, behavior patterns that have become really deeply ingrained. You, like me, look at the roots of the challenges rather than just the behavior itself, and offer support and interventions when the traditional parenting hasn't worked, or you say it has failed, which is often true. I love on your website too that you talk about that it's not parents who are broken or the children. It's just that, the approach hasn't quite been right. It's the traditional parenting advice that's failed.
Yes. I think that's such an important message to really remind parents because just working with so many families, I know how hard it is, especially, I mean, the main demographic that I've worked with is families who are raising kids on the spectrum who have
Mhm,
ADHD or sensory issues. And the types of challenges that they face on the daily is very tough. It's things that most parents don't have to go through. And so
mm,
I think just hearing that, this is not your fault. It truly isn't. It really gives parents that feeling like to feel that they've been seen because I think
mm,
so many of these parents they put their hearts and souls into their kids trying to figure out so many things, put them in therapy, they're reading stuff, like they're trying so hard, but just the conventional parenting ideologies are and methodologies are not working for their child and it feels like you're failing. But
mm,
the truth is it's the approach that needs to be taken differently because your child's brain is wired differently. And so just
mm,
understanding that it's not you, you're not doing things wrong, you're not a failure as a parent. It's just that we need to understand your child better so that you have the better approach that is actually going to fit the need that they truly have that most kids may not necessarily have sensory issues. They may not
mm.
have certain emotional needs or physical needs that your child does, and those are the things that need to be fulfilled within your child that is just missing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's very similar, I guess, to how often, the trouble that neurodivergent kids have is mostly when they're trying to fit into a system that's not made for them, whether that's school or socially as well. It's all geared around typical development. And so the parenting advice is the same. It's not taking those differences into account. And that's where the challenge happens.
Yes, absolutely.
And so you help parents with 3 big areas. And so the first is sensory overwhelm, then there's executive functioning, and then emotional regulation as well. Uh, I'm interested to hear a little bit about the executive functioning, and because I think, well, how I describe that to parents is that executive functioning is executive means like executing and then the function. So it's actually doing something or carrying something out in the moment. It's something that so many kids, ADHDers and lots of autistic kids struggle with. What's your approach in helping families work through those kind of difficulties?
Yes. So you're absolutely right. Executive functioning is such a huge challenge with those both of those demographics of kids. It's really the cognitive processing, the ability to organize and plan and initiate the task that the child is struggling with. And so
Mm,
what this would look like in really practical life, it could be something like getting them to pack their backpacks with all the stuff they need to bring to school. So your
mhm,
child might be struggling to remember to put their homework in their bag, put the water bottle in, bring that form for their teacher. Everything is just like a mess and it's like crumpled paper inside the bag. That's just one example. And so when these types of challenges, you start to see that in different areas of your child's life. At school, they're struggling to initiate and finish work, and then they come home and they're just kind of everywhere. They can't organize their own belongings. It really
mhm,
impacts your child's day to day. And as a parent, how do you really support your child? Because what we see in the long run is that if your child's not able to organize themselves and get stuff done, now they're in middle school, then they get
mhm,
high.
mhm,
Well, obviously, the workload gets harder, the responsibilities get bigger, the expectation to be more independent gets higher, and yet your child is not able to keep up with that. And so they start to
mhm,
fall behind their peers. And of course, your child will notice these things. Kids
mm,
see what other kids can do. And if they feel that they can't, it starts to affect them from
mm,
from a confidence perspective, from a even a mental health perspective. They start to question, why is it so hard for me? Yet for other kids, it's so easy. And I get yelled at for it. Everyone tells me I'm lazy. Everyone tells me that I'm disorganized. And, they just get all the bad messages. Whereas, everyone else is being told all the nice things.
mm,
So to kind of go back to your question, like how do we actually help kids who are struggling with that executive functioning? It's really helping to break down that task for them. So when we see that your child's struggling with something, it's first of all, as a parent, stopping any kind of intrusive thoughts you might have of labeling your child for those behaviors. Um,
mhm,
Common ones are definitely like my child's just being lazy. They're just being
mhm,
oppositional or defiant. They just don't want to do it. And while yes, that might look like that on the surface as the behavior, and like you were saying, like we look beyond the behaviors that they're not doing the thing that we want them to do, but underneath
mhm.
the surface is actually a dysfunction in the ability to plan and organize the steps to get the thing done. So what I
Yeah.
teach parents is look at the thing that they're stuck on and figure out, well, what particular spot are they actually stuck on? Is it
Mhm,
to initiate because they feel so overwhelmed if they have an assignment and they keep procrastinating? They haven't even started reading the book to do the book assignment. So what part in
mhm,
that, instead of saying, why aren't you reading the book? Your assignment's due in 2 days. That's going to create more panic and anxiety. You sit down with your child and you figure out, how can I make this more doable to make it feel less
mhm,
overwhelming for you? Let's
mm,
try to break down maybe reading the book to 2 pages at a time. And every time you're done 2 pages, you get up, you get a drink of water. And this is where
mhm,
some of my sensory background kind of comes in. Bringing in movement breaks, bringing in sensory tools can help your child recharge their brains and their brain batteries so that they can come back to the task. And
Mhm.
just by doing that, like, I have seen such huge progress in kids, because kids have never been treated that way. These kids have never been supported in this way. They've just been told, "Do the thing, and I want to see the finished product." Meanwhile,
Mhm.
they actually need the steps broken down. So that's just
Mm.
one example of how to start shifting your mindset and helping your child with executive function.
Yeah, I think that's a great example because it shows a couple of things, and it helps me to see it from the child's point of view when and we all know that kids, well, maybe we all don't know. People who work with kids like you and I, we know that kids do get told things like that you're lazy or disorganized, but also maybe even just thinking about it from the child's point of view of seeing everyone else be able to do it and they can't do it and they don't know why is
Mm.
a really hard place to be. But if you break it down with kids like that, they can usually then start to identify what the block is. And once they can communicate about it and use some strategies, feel a lot more confident in being able to do the tasks, which is great to see.
Absolutely. And it's really those moments of allowing your child to feel supported and getting them to a place of feeling success. Because
Mm, mhm,
a lot of our kids with ADHD and autism, because things are so hard for them, and if they don't have the support, they're often faced with a lot of feelings of failure. Feelings of like,
mm,
I'm seeing the other kids and they can do it. Why can't I? I must be broken. I'm trying so hard, I'm putting my all into this, but yet it's still not good enough. And that
mhm,
becomes the inner voice in their heads. And then what happens over time if the support's not given? Now your child's older, and that's the message they've been receiving and been telling themselves. Then they're faced with more real life situations, right? Now they're older and they kind of have to take on more of their own responsibility, and they feel like, I can't do it. I'm just a failure.
mm,
Why should I try to
mhm,
keep going? Then they feel unmotivated to try and to push themselves, and then they get stuck in a cycle. And so that's why it's
mm,
so important when we talk about early intervention. When your child's struggling, it's not about waiting for it to kind of pass, because these things don't just pass. They don't just go away.
mhm,
What kids end up doing is that they end up masking. They end up, especially the ones who are more, they try to keep things in. They might not
mhm,
be as loud. They're the ones that are quieter. They keep it in, and then it ruminates within them. Even actually even the loud ones, that it just manifests differently, but it's inside. The messaging has been eating them. And so when we don't give them that support, we don't give them an opportunity to feel success. And so that's why
mm,
I'm so passionate about helping parents, because you're at the prime time of your kid's life to actually make a difference for them. And
mhm,
this is where you have the most say and you have the most influence on their lives, and it is harder as they get older to make those changes for them, right?
mm,
And it's also kind of like to, beyond the executive functioning challenge your child has, what truly ends up happening more so is that there becomes a disconnect, because when your child struggles so hard and they hear so many messages, there tends to be a lot of pushback on from that child. They feel like
mhm,
it's them against the world. And as a parent, you feel like you start to feel like a like a pressure with them. Every time you try to approach, they push you away. Why? Because
mhm,
it's been so hard for them and no one supported them. And then
mm,
it grows into further and further disconnection and a lot of arguing. And a lot of these kids also have emotional regulation challenges too, because that's part of executive functioning.
mm,
They have a lot of tantrums or meltdowns, and so I know it's a lot that parents go through when you're raising a child who has these challenges. And so that's why it is really important to just seek that help and get support for yourself, so you know how to support your child.
mm. Yeah, I completely agree, and I think, but you because what I see a lot is then the kids who are having trouble with doing things and have those negative messages about themselves and compared to others, then as a psychologist, I guess the natural, or not natural, but the sequence we then see is then kids having trouble with things like anxiety and potentially depression.
Mhm.
Um, but also I didn't yeah, what you've highlighted for me is that disconnect between kids and their parents as well, which I think does come with that. If there's constant nagging and, because we have to get out the door in the mornings,
Mhm.
um, and so it's a stressful time, but if that interaction is we're asking for our kids to do more than they're able to do, and they don't feel like they can do it, and yeah, that disconnect would grow as well, which is not a path I think any parent would want their kids to be on.
Mhm. Exactly.
I'm interested to hear from your point of view what you think, because yeah, OTs might have a different perspective than psychologists. But what I see too is, and I say to parents, hopefully you agree, is that when kids start to receive that support so they can experience success, then they kind of start to understand that they can do things once they understand how, um, and the strategies that can help. When children are small, their parents are often the ones, or teachers as well, but suggesting the strategies and helping them use strategies. And then as they grow and develop, they tend to become more and more independent, or they can be, with using those strategies for themselves. Is that how you see it, or do you think there's a different way that parents need to do it?
I would say I agree with that approach. I mean, it's really looking at each of your children individually. Like if you have more than one,
Mm,
it's not seeing it as there's a cookie cutter approach to how do I support my child to build their independence. It's seeing where they're at. And so,
mm, mhm,
and it starts from literally in toddlerhood or even earlier. It's really getting into a place of connection with your child and really learning about your child from such an early age, and you start to see
mm,
what can you see that they're capable of, and wherever
mhm,
there's a glimmer of capability, you hone in on that and you give them opportunities. So for instance, like I have a toddler, and I remember when she was just one and she was just starting to walk, I would still get her to put things away because
mm, mhm,
that was her developmentally, she was able to help me out with that, and so every year there's always something that I can add to give her to start doing, and I never
mm,
pushed her to a place where it's way beyond her developmental level where it would elicit a big tantrum or meltdown. It's always to a point where she feels successful. And so the
mhm,
same thing with your kids, it's finding the thing that you can give them a little bit of a responsibility where they can do the thing and feel successful. Because I
mm,
think there's a balance that parents need to strike, and I think they're having a hard time figuring that out, because when you have your baby and they're so dependent on you, then they start becoming toddlers and start moving, and you're just wondering, like, at what point do I stop doing things for them, and when do I start letting them do things? And it all becomes a blur, and so when
yes,
you see your child, especially, they have so much trouble with doing something, you tend to overdo for them because it's like, well, if
yes,
I try to get them to do it, they're just not gonna be able to do the thing. But
mm,
it's getting creative, and I think this is the part where, I mean, like, as OTs, we really tap into the creative side to things to look at, well, what's that little sliver of a task that your child can do? If it's
mm,
dressing,
mhm,
instead of grabbing their arms and just throwing on the clothes on top of them because 'cause you're trying to get out the door, try to have
mm,
a little bit more time, wake up a little bit earlier, and try to get your child to do one part of the thing, whether it's can you go get the jacket, or if they can't get the jacket,
mm,
I'm going to hold it, but can you put your arm through? And then it's
mhm.
slowly building that over time, because then if we don't enable our kids when they're young, they start to learn that I'm not capable, I'm not able to even
Mm,
try, and when I have tried, it was never good enough because I wasn't fast enough and I got yelled at for it. So what's the point?
Mm,
So it's really just reframing things and figuring out
yes.
how to structure the environment better to allow our kids to actually do the work.
Yes. Yeah. I think you've explained that really well. And I think what I meant was that, yeah, not so much in terms of pushing kids towards independence, but to reassure parents that they will become more independent through the support we give them when they're young. Because you're right, it's about reaching that point of where they feel successful. Um, Yeah, and I guess maybe a little bit of reassurance for parents that giving the support doesn't mean that your child will always need that support. It's about giving them the support to feel successful so that kids then start to have belief in themselves that they can do things on their own.
Yes. Yeah, I do agree with that, and I think, like, there's a bit of that fear of, well, if I give some support, like, won't I make my child too dependent? Like, they won't be ready for the world.
Mm,
I hear that argument
mhm,
a lot. I think just maybe I'm on social media too much and I
mm,
see the comment section
maybe.
going, but I think that is a fear, or at least the thoughts that come out from a lot of parents is like, well, if I give them too much support, they're not going to be able to do it. But again, it's like finding the balance between, if you don't do it, if you don't help them and give them support, well, they're going to struggle and then they're going to,
Mm.
and you obviously don't want to overdo it either. So I think it's just recognizing we're not talking about the two extremes. It's finding a middle ground.
That's right, and that just right level of support. So you don't want to over support your kids, but you don't want to leave them unsupported. It's supporting them enough so that what they're doing is just the right amount of challenging for them to be able to, try, but also be successful.
Absolutely.
And so I think as we're talking, I remember the days of having toddlers and that you know, sometimes those tasks, like getting ready in the morning to leave, were just so slow. But on the flip side, I felt in my personal parenting journey anyway, I had a little more time because um, there weren't clear deadlines a lot of the time, like getting to school at the time that it starts and that kind of thing. And so it feels like it's a little bit of a slower time or season of life when you have small kids. And once kids are at school age and you're trying to do these things in the morning and still get to school on time, do you have any advice for parents about how to um, manage that?
So manage the transition into, could you ask that question again?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, maybe it was just it definitely wasn't clear. We were talking before about how it's very early morning here for
Yeah,
me, and I'm not a morning
and
person.
it's late where I am at, so
Yep,
we'll just need a
you're
little bit of a coffee break, I think, after this.
Yeah, yeah, you're winding down for the day, so we're both in our, you know, perhaps not on our A game for brains. Um, oh, sorry, I meant for me. I didn't want to insinuate that you're
No,
not.
no, I
Um,
need a little bit of a coffee boost too, so
yeah, yeah. I guess, I guess maybe it was more so maybe I didn't have a question. Maybe it was just reflection that sometimes it feels a bit harder when the pressures of family life are busier and you've
Mhm.
got maybe more than one kid by now and you're getting trying to get out the door for school. But I think you mentioned it at the beginning of our conversation when you were talking about stopping that first intrusive thought about or judgment about what our kids are doing. Maybe that's the answer to finding that calm we're looking for to be able to give the right support that our kids need.
Yeah, I mean, so I do have a thought about this, it's maybe a bit controversial, I don't know, but I think it's just the fact that we live in this very modern, fast-paced world, and us as parents, we're very caught up with keeping up with everything, keeping up with our work,
Mhm.
up with just household duties, and we do have to question that though. We do have to ask ourselves why we're rushing so much. And I get
Mm,
there's a piece of like an economical, financial part to that answer, but at the same time, we really have to take a step back and go, our kids are only young ones, especially if we're talking about our very young kids, and they need to move at a slower pace. They're being
mm,
pulled into our world where we're kind of forcing them. Like we're like, we got to get out the door. You got to get to daycare. You got to get to school, whatever it is.
mhm, mhm,
But in their little worlds, the world doesn't move that fast. And so we are
mm,
pushing them that oftentimes it's triggering those tantrums and meltdowns because the ability to transition and shift their minds is just not there yet. They're just developmentally
mm,
not there. And so we have to kind of start prioritizing, like, we know our kids are developmentally not there, yet my lifestyle requires me to be this fast. Now, where do I have to give? And at the end of the
yeah,
day, what's the most important thing? Of course, it's our kids. And so sometimes it's figuring out how do we slow down our lives so that we can support our kids and not feel like we're pulling them through, because then that creates a lot of stress on them. And with that stress at such an early age, now they're just wired to stress. And then what happens when they get older? Well, they're just used to a stressful life. And so I think that
mm,
creates a lot of other challenges in and of itself. So I think what I'm trying to say is that we do need to cut back, and we do need to start figuring out ways to, you know, if it is your job that's pulling you so fast, like what adjustments can you make? And I think it's more like of a systematic problem. I think there's
mhm,
a lot more to it. There isn't a simple answer to it. As a system, I think there needs to be a lot more support, especially on moms as in those
mhm,
early years, giving a lot more leeway because I mean, at the end of the day, when you really think about it, these moms, these parents, they're investing their time and energy into children who are going to be the future.
mm,
So if we really
mhm,
want to have a thriving future, we really need to support moms, or
mm,
whoever the stay-at-home or the more primary parent is, typically mom,
mm,
give them more support so that they can actually be more present and not be rushing to go to a full-time job when it's very challenging to be doing the juggle, and I think majority of parents are doing this right now.
mm. Yeah, I'm glad that you gave your what you thought maybe is controversial opinion, because I completely agree as well. And I think the other thing that, yeah, definitely living in being constantly stressed is not great for kids, in terms of how they'll grow up expecting this stress, but also the more stressed our kids are, the less they're capable of doing things, like particularly with executive functioning and problem solving. Um, but also, I think that the pressures on us as parents too, if it's too high, that the more stressed we are, the less patience we have for our kids, and the harder it is to take that time in the mornings. And so, um, yeah, having so many demands isn't great for us either. So I definitely agree.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really just unveiling the systematic problem in today's world. It's that parents are very stressed, and that stress it's like it's contagious. If you're a stressed
Mm,
parent, you like you said, you'll be more irritable, short, less patient. So what will that do?
mhm,
You're going to be more dysregulated. That dysregulation is going to fall on your child, and they're going to experience that stress, and they're learning how to regulate themselves. But if they have a parent who is stressed and dysregulated, they're only going to pick that up. That's what we call emotional contagion. You're picking up the emotions of the adults around you, the people around you. And so that
mhm,
child is now in an environment where they're rushed, they're stressed, there's dysregulation, and then you wonder, why are these kids struggling so much? Well, we have to look at the environment. We have to look at the what's going on with parents too. So how do we start
mm,
reducing all of that stress in the home? how do we start reducing expectations for everybody so that it feels more manageable, so that everyone feels like they're in a more harmonious environment, and they're not feeling like they're being pulled in a million directions.
Mm. You've just, I think, given a perfect example of how those things interact together, the emotional regulation or dysregulation when we're stressed and feeling out of control, the executive functioning. Um, yeah, they really interact like that. But when you add on top of that the sensory challenges that autistic kids and often ADHDers face, then that's an extra layer of challenge in the situation.
Yes, absolutely. And so it really is a big puzzle that you have to piece together, and you have to
Mm,
well, first of all, you have to figure out what are all the different puzzles to your own family that's contributing
mhm,
to whatever chaos you are feeling that's happening within your dynamic. And then once
mhm.
you identify those pieces, it's okay, how do we actually start putting in supports and proper routines and tools so that we can actually get everyone's regulation on the right page.
Yeah, yep. I I like that part you mentioned, the harmony too. You talk about being on a journey to a harmonious home. And as soon as I heard that, I was thinking, yes, that's what I want. Is that what everyone wants? It's just, it's not about being perfect. It's not about getting it right all the time. It's just about, you know, home is where we all should be at our most comfortable and calm and happy. And so having harmony in the home is such a great thing to aim for.
Yes, it is, and
Mm,
I do believe it's possible for every family to have that. It's though you need to be willing to shift your own mindset. I think that's primary. It's as a parent, you are still the leader of your home, and you set the kind of the frequency, the foundation for everybody. So until
mm,
you start to see that, it does start with you before saying, I want my child to, improve and be better. But just shifting that can already set the right tone for everybody. And
mhm,
then also that village around you. I think that's the piece that we are missing today is we're all isolated, and without proper support from actual people to give you, some free hands, you really
mhm,
can't do this thing called life all on your own.
mm,
You
mhm.
need to have people, and there's really you have to search for it. It's not there.
Mm.
They're not people walking around outside saying, "Hey, I'm gonna be part of your village." Like, you really do have to
Yeah.
search for those people that have that
Yes.
same mindset as you, that are willing to offer a hand, and you have to reciprocate the same for them in order for you to really build a strong, like, village and unit around you.
Yeah, definitely. And like our kids need support, we as parents need support as well. And the village can be, however it looks, however, it doesn't have to look a certain way. It doesn't have to be people in your neighborhood or family. It can be people that you find online, or I know lots of autistic families find support from other autistic families who might not be near them, but they feel like that connection is there and genuine. And so, yeah, pulling in whoever you can to be part of your village is a great idea.
Mhm.
And how then that kind of brings me to the next question of how people can work with you if you were to be part of their village.
They can find me, first of all, on different social media platforms. I do give a lot of free different resources. So I'm on Instagram, YouTube, Threads, and Facebook. So my handles are all Lisa Parent Coach. And
Mhm,
so I do give weekly videos on my YouTube where I talk a lot about this. I talk about different topics: executive functioning, emotional regulation, how to create like a very secure bond and attachment with your child, how to raise resilient kids. That's all the type of
Mhm.
topics I talk on my channel. So if anyone is
Mm.
interested in just learning more, if you're ready to really make more transformational changes, I have two different options. So one, I have a course. It's all about emotional regulation, and it really just gets to the heart of the dysregulation that is happening in your home. And I've identified 5 different pillars as to why families and kids are really getting dysregulated and how to address each one of those. So it really
Mhm.
breaks it down in and gives you a roadmap on what you can start doing to start seeing change. And if you're looking for more of a personal guidance, that's where I give my one-on-one parent coaching, where we really get
Mhm.
into the nitty-gritty of what's happening in your particular life and what's really creating the most challenge for you. And the feedback I've been getting from families and parents that have been working with me is that they felt that they've never had somebody where they can actually talk about those daily challenges. Like there's really
Mm.
you go to your pediatrician and they try to help, but I mean, of course it's like a 5-10 minute visit. They just check your child,
Mhm.
go. There's really not someone who can really help pinpoint, what do I need to do differently in my approach with my child? How can I address these sensory things that I see literally on the spot? And how do I actually speak to my child in those moments to help them calm them down or work through a dysregulated moment? So those are the things that
Mm.
we really work through in my one-on-one parent coaching.
Yeah, great. So lots of information in your course about emotions and regulating them and supporting them from a parent point of view. But then, like with me as well, it's about working one on one gives you that opportunity to really dig deeper into what's happening for an individual family, and then providing the support about what exactly to do in the moment.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining me today. Lisa, I feel like we've only really gotten through, well, we have touched on all the areas, but focused quite a lot on executive functioning. I feel like we could do an equally long episode about each of the other two areas that you work in, because there's so much information in there for parents. But I really loved the way today you were able to break things down into a really easy to understand way for parents, but with those practical examples as well. So, yeah, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much, Leanne, for having me.
And I'll link all of your information so that parents can find you in the show notes, because you've got some great resources as well for families on your website, like the one about executive functioning I love, because it's how to find out if your child's impulsivity is age appropriate. And I think it's really hard for parents to work out if their kid's at the right level or not. So that's a great place to start. Thanks for listening to this episode of Parent Like a Psychologist. If you found it helpful, please share on Instagram so other parents can benefit too, and tag me at Leanne Tran Psychology so that I can say a big thank you. Head over to leannetran.com.au to join the village for bite-sized psychology tips straight to your inbox. I really hope this podcast has brought a new perspective and you a step closer towards a calm parent and a thriving child. Have a delightful day.